Hello, I'm Neil Dealey, co-founder and partner of Architects and Urban Planners Metropolitan Workshop. Welcome to Reshaped, a podcast series to mark our 15th year and to record perspectives on how the built environment is changing and needs to change in this historic moment. We asked leading thinkers and doers to respond to issues highlighted by the pandemic while we're in the throes of change, and memories and perspectives are fresh. Has the door opened to a new era? We think so. Coronavirus forced us all to take a long, hard look at where we live, our homes and our neighbourhoods. That is what Nicola Bacon, co-founder of Social Life, does for a living. She seeks and finds the social glue that sticks communities together and advises government, third sector agencies and developers on how to tackle inequality and disadvantage by working with communities. What Nicola finds tougher to locate is the understanding and the sympathy for the things that people actually value in the way our built environment industry works. Do we often overlook the ordinary things that communities cherish? We asked Nicola about finding and creating social value and what makes places work well.
Hello, I'm Nicola Bacon and I'm one of the founding directors of Social Life. I think the experience of the pandemic has really brought things into view very starkly. So people have spent a lot more time in their homes, they've spent a lot more time in their neighbourhoods, people are kind of rooted to the places they live in a way that we just haven't been for, decades really. It's been, I think for everyone it's been quite an extraordinary experience. And so the awareness of what is good about home and what is good about neighbourhood and parks and local shops and community and neighbours and relation, all those things have come out very strongly, but also the kind of flip side of that. So what's also come out is, very difficult issues about housing inequality, about access to space, about access to health in lots of ways, because when your housing is bad, then your ability to kind of enjoy your community and your neighbourhood is really limited. So I think COVID has kind of put a magnifying glass on everything. It's not actually exposed anything that's new. It's exposed what was there anyway. But in the good and the bad, one of the things we often work with is we work with groups of people who come from very different professional backgrounds. So we have developers and architects and surveyors and people who are used to being in the same room, but actually their basic assumptions are very different. And they think they have a shared knowledge of community, but actually when you delve into it, it means something different to all of them. And one of the things that often we find quite difficult is in our work is people in the built environment profession often don't look at data very well. It's quite a kind of data blind field in lots of ways. So people tend to go with their prejudice about neighbourhoods and different areas and what will work rather than what is actually known to work. And the other thing that we come across a lot is it's always not valuing the ordinary. So the things we like in lives and neighbourhoods are often we might like the lovely new building, but we also quite like the crummy high street because we're used to it. Or we like a particular playground for our kids because actually it may not look great, but it works really, really well. Or we we get attached to things because they're useful, sometimes not because they're actually beautiful in urban design terms. And I think that can be a real challenge. And part of the issues about sort of quality of life and social sustainability, about how you get that balance between new and old and how you sort of set aside design considerations and how you work really flexibly. And we don't, in London anyway, we don't really have models that do that very well. I think we have models that create big things at scale, that demolish rather than refurbish. And those things, I think, get in the way of community quite a lot. So one example of the things I'm talking about is Elephant and Castle Shopping Centre, which is really very close to our office. So it's somewhere we knew very well for lunches, for hanging out, for just getting things. It was a building that was one of the first big shopping centres of its type. It didn't really work initially. It went through a really interesting history of being redeveloped and kind of opened up as a low-cost, low-rent shopping place. So a lot of traders moved into very small units, sometimes subdivided units, who were from migrant backgrounds. So we ended up by, 5 years ago, the shopping centre was full of Latin businesses, a lot of West African businesses, a lot of, a real mix of places from all over the world. There were just a lot of things that hold communities together, from like things like helping with informal legal advice to advice about schools and just this lovely kind of social world as well, a lot of cafes. There's a lot of life there. There were a lot of really good things. And I think it was very appreciated by a lot of people in the area, but from the outside, it persistently looked like a grey concrete thing. And of course, the shopping centre is part of the whole Elephant and Castle redevelopment. What was lost was not only a space for those traders, but something very much like a social heart of a bit of South London that's slightly lacking a heart. And the model was very much about demolish, rebuild, as the whole of the Elephant and Castle redevelopment has been. And we were really lucky a couple of years ago. We went to Seoul and spent some time there. And there's a really interesting shopping centre of the same era there called Sewin Sangha, which has been redeveloped in a completely different way. So the old kind of heart of it, which is an electronics market. So you go in and just it is one of the most light-filled places I've ever been. The old heart has stayed, and it was redeveloped by almost like encasing it in a kind of modern use. So you have a beautiful roof garden on top of it. You have maker spaces around it. You have places that are selling kind of funky pottery and things. And it was a very different way of thinking about how you modernise and kind of bring an old bit of the city back into use. And I think it's done very elegantly. So you keep the old, but you have something very modern and very fresh there as well. And it just feels like we don't think about those models. And so what Sewin Sangha's done is keep the old value and bring in new value. And that surely is a really good thing. You can talk about these things for ages and it's all very interesting and kind of quite unspecific. So we've tried to become as specific as possible and look at what data that we can curate and bring to bear that will actually help show insights in this. And what frameworks we can use that will help people find tools to kind of work differently. So when we create frameworks, they're not prescriptive because what makes a place have value in one context will be very different from another. So you need flexibility, but we think you can see sort of common elements. So we think there's an element about giving people control. There's an element about social life and belonging and all those sort of relationships. There's an element about making the right amenities in place. And there's an element about flexibility, about space to grow, about space to change in the future, about resilience. So we've been working with those things for about 8 years. There's other models out there. We don't own this field. There's other people doing good work. And we've done a lot of work for big developers who see the business value in it. So there is a business case for social sustainability in that the place will work better. It will be more attractive. It will last better. It will help reputationally for the business. It will be better for the people living there. So there is, a business driver in this. But we've also seen how that goes quite quickly when other imperatives, particularly cost imperatives, come in. For social value to take centre stage, we'd need some quite profound system changes in how we think about processes and how we think about outcomes and how we think about how we all work. That would be great. In some ways, that kind of huge step change isn't going to happen overnight. So I think what we're going to see is a more incremental move towards social value becoming more critical and more important. And that will be, the way things change. There will be great experiments. Some people will follow. It's an innovation journey in lots of ways. It's like what works, what actually has traction. To me, one of the big things is about people recognising what is good already and not just thinking that social value is about the new. It's about actually how do we work with what's here and what's working and how do we support what's working and work with that. And I think that's the way great cities evolve. They evolve in bits over time.
That was Nicola Bacon of Social Life. She told us about a shopping centre in South Korea that has managed to blend the old, which people valued, with the new solution very successfully, something she hasn't yet seen in proposals to replace the ugly but socially valued Elephant and Castle shopping centre near her office in South London. Nicola argues for profound changes in the way those of us who work in the built environment look at what's there before we demolish and regenerate. Social value, she says, is seen as increasingly critical to how we value new development, and some even see it as a long-term business driver. Perhaps the pandemic will speed up an evolution in how we think about what kind of value is most important. You can listen to other podcasts in the Reshape series at all the major providers, or go to our website, metwork.co.uk. Series directed by Lee Mallet, produced by David Michon and Justina Green, recorded and edited by Sean Crook.